Tonight I'll read Chapter 18, The Hideout. To Emily's amazement, Susie Longlost increased their speed towards the net. "Turn turtle!" Longlost shouted to Aaron on the other pinwheel. The young man looked startled, then nodded. They were nearly at the net. Emily could see that beyond the net, the canal bank opened up into a stoneway on either side. It was thronged with expectant warders. "Take a deep breath and hold on!" screamed Longlost to Emily. The net was yards away. Surely they were going to crash straight into it. Emily didn't think that it would break even if they hit it at full speed. She felt Longlost tense herself. Then they were falling sideways towards the water and tearing into it with a huge stinging splash. And just before they went under, Emily caught a glimpse of Aaron and Sam doing the same thing, their pinwheel capsizing but still moving forward. Then her vision was filled with bubbles and she blinked them away, her eyes smarting in the cold water, and still they turned until they were completely upside down, with the pinwheel spinning above them, and Emily looked up at her feet, which were drifting off the footboard, and beyond them, and saw through the dancing surface of the water, silhouetted against the bright sky, the dark web of the net as they passed under it. As Emily watched, her eyes wide, a thin black shape, veering wildly, smashed into the net above them and clung there, its propeller churning up the water fruitlessly in a cloud of white bubbles. The leading pike boat, distracted by the fugitives' unexpected manoeuvre, had failed to stop in time and rammed the net. Emily held tightly onto Longlost, the water dragging at her as they moved through it, the net past them now, the dark silhouettes of the watching wardens on the bank gesticulating wildly in astonishment. Emily felt a twisting surge and the pinwheel began to turn upright again and felt herself being pulled to the surface, her lungs gasping for air. Longlost had managed to keep her feet on the footboard, but as the pinwheel righted itself, Emily found herself hanging off, still half in the water. As she struggled to regain her footing, hampered by her water-heavy clothing, several of the wardens dived in off the bank and started to swim towards them, their faces grim. "Go!" she cried to Longlost. The pinwheel started to move forward as Emily climbed to her feet, the wardens clutching vainly at her as they moved away. Aaron and Sam surged past them, water streaming off them as they picked up speed. Emily looked back and saw the wardens struggling to unhook the net to let the other pike boats through to continue the pursuit, but the pike boat that had rammed the net was hampering the operation, not least because its driver was hanging limply over the top of the net. In moments they turned a corner and the wardens were out of sight. "How did you do that?" yelled Emily. "Gyro cut out," Longlost shouted back. "Thought it was worth a try." There was a note of satisfaction in the older girl's voice. She picked up speed and overtook the other pinwheel, then led them through a bewildering succession of backwaters and side canals until Emily was dizzy with all the twists and turns they had made. Finally, it began to slow. The backwater they were in was narrowing sharply, the high blank walls of the buildings either side crowding in around them. Soon they were almost scraping through the green bricks. Ahead of them a high brick wall closed off the end of the backwater. As they neared it, however, Emily realized that there was a tunnel into it, guarded by a padlocked black iron gate. Longlost unlocked the gate, and they squeezed through, crouching under the low roof, the way ahead in darkness. Before long, Emily saw light ahead, and suddenly they came out into a wide, circular chamber, flooded in its centre. Above them a high dome made from stained glass, sunlight streaming down through it and lighting up the clear water with beams of multicoloured light. After the darkness of the tunnel, it was like suddenly walking into the middle of a firework display. "It's beautiful," she said in wonder. "Our home," replied Longlost. She piloted the pinwheel to the edge of the water where a rough wooden jetty had been built, and they disembarked. Emily looked around, drinking in the beauty of the place. A huge mosaic-covered floor beneath the pool and ancient smoke-blackened paintings in reds and ochres covered the walls. In the centre of the pool, what seemed to be a simple stone statue of a fountain rose up. Looking more closely, Emily realised that there were steps leading up to the top of the statue, and that it was designed as a pedestal on which someone could stand and speak. Stone pillars around the edge of the chamber supported a balcony that looked down over the pool, and Emily could see doorways leading off it. To either side of them, the chamber opened up into smaller chambers, and behind them was a long hall with a vaulted roof, and 2 lines of pillars either side of the central aisle. It's a church! Emily had only seen pictures of them in books. The temple that she and her father attended on holy days had a similar atmosphere, but was more straightforward in design. In the temples, the focus of attention was always the long table down the centre that everyone congregated around for the tale-telling. Here, the focus was the fountain pedestal in the middle of the pool at the end of the hall. Longlost nodded. The monks built it before they retreated into the abbey. It's been deserted for centuries. Now it's completely surrounded by other buildings, warehouses mostly. The way we came in is the only entrance. All the others are walled off. Sam stepped off the other pinwheel and stared around him. This place is amazing. The fair-haired girl that they'd seen earlier came out of a side door and stopped, looking at Emily and Sam in confusion. Longlost saw her expression. You seen Joni? Emily guessed that was the skinny boy. The fair-haired girl shook her head. Ain't back yet. Longlost frowned, then shrugged. He'll be back, she said. He's probably checking the eel traps. She turned to Emily and Sam. This is Maeve, she said. Maeve nodded to them briefly, and then glanced at Aaron, who gave a small shrug. Her expression was blank, but Emily could tell that Maeve was not happy about their presence. Maeve turned her back and left through the side door. Longlost studied Emily and Sam, who stood there silently, clothes dripping. My crew are upset that I brought you here, she said finally. She had a slight frown, as if she too was puzzled as to why she'd done it. I can understand why. For a start, you're both crazy. Worse than that, you've stirred the wardens up worse than a bear in a bee house. So, she looked at them challengingly. Tell me why it was worth my while. Emily couldn't fail to notice that Longlost had placed her hand on one of the knives hanging from her belt at her side. We'll tell you about the hidden treasure, said Sam quickly. Aaron's face lit up, but Longlost looked sceptical. She shook her head. First mythological creatures, now hidden treasure, she said. I really don't like being made a fool of. She pulled the knife from its scabbard and toyed with it. Sam watched, hypnotised. Longlost looked at Emily sharply. So, what's the real story? Fallen out with Daddy and come looking for some excitement at my expense? Emily felt a flush of anger and stepped forward towards Longlost, looking at the red-haired girl in the eyes. Why are you here? She demanded. Longlost looked startled. What? Emily waved at the buildings surrounding them. Living here, in this forgotten church. Why is that? She was furious. Longlost's knuckles whitened on the hilt of the knife. What's it to do with you? Sam was looking at Emily as if she'd gone mad. Why aren't you out there, doing what everyone else does, fitting in, towing the line? Emily demanded. Longlost's face darkened, and she stepped forward towards Emily. Now they were just a couple of steps apart. Emily had to tilt her head upwards to look the taller Longlost in the eye. You don't, because you don't like the way they live. You don't like the way they think. Emily glared at her. They live dull lives and think dull thoughts. That's right, isn't it? Longlost stared at her, her expression unchanging. But then, here you are, on the edge of something so... She searched for the word. Terrifying, said Sam. Amazing, said Emily firmly, that it changes everything we think we know, and actually all you can do is to be just like everyone else. Longlost's movement was so swift that Emily had no time to move. The knife tip pricked her under the chin and forced her head back. That's right, said Emily, her voice strained but accusatory, and this makes you so different from the wardens. Longlost's face was bright red. The knife tip twisted in Emily's skin as Longlost shook with anger. Emily felt a thin, warm trickle of blood spill down her throat. That's the end of chapter 18. Good night.